A very good evening to our viewers. Welcome to this week's edition of The Agenda. My name is Gideon Thomas, your host. Tonight we are unpacking the labor situation in the country, especially the process that has been going on in the past week regarding the plight of civil servants. And to discuss that with us tonight on the show is Gideon Thomas. He is head of education at Napwu, one of the unions that are involved in that process, as well as labor law researcher Herbert Jauch. They are here to help me understand what is going on in that regard. Thomas, thank you for making time.
Thank you very much.
Is Herbert, always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, wonderful. I'll start with you, Gideon. In not so many words, if you can give us a bit of contextual background to what has been happening to bring us to a process where a ballot process is being now held to determine the way forward for the civil servants.
Thank you indeed, and we want to also thank you for providing this opportunity for the voice of the workers to be heard, and also for the public to consume the correct facts around what is happening, affecting the public servants. Many people, when we say public servant, they take it for granted. They understand that it's just a few government employees.
Yeah.
Indeed, this is the entire public service. It is for Napwu, all unified structures, various professions in public service that are not teachers, that are not from the services, and the services, you will have the Namibia Defense Force, the police force, the correctional services, and the central intelligence. The rest will then be members of NANTO because they are from the teaching profession. That tells you that these are employees of a country across the width and breadth of Namibia. At hand is a situation that started way back with the negotiations for the financial year 2018-2019, which ended with a zero offer being signed, accepted on understanding the prevailing economic situation then. 2019, 2020, the same thing. 2020, 2021, where we even ended up at conciliation, then the same thing again was taken to be water under the bridge. We went too late. Backdating this was sort of difficult. Then we came to submit the demands for the financial year 2021-2022. Well ahead of the budget planning, budget submission, and the budget approval. Surprisingly, the employer government came to respond to us only towards the end of the year 2021 in November, which date they proposed, and we immediately take and resumed that day. Similarly, on the same day, we also deadlocked because again it was clear to the workers, the budget was tabled, the budget was revised. The Honorable Minister of Finance have told to the public, now the workers understand, the unions understand, there is nothing for them in the budget. The employees differed, and the employee this time around persisted, and rightly so, that we should insist at least for them to have something. 4 years is too much. Others are even saying 8 years, others are saying more than that because it says 20 this to 20 that, and they say 20
they multiply the numbers.
We deadlocked we formed a internal technical committee, and we found the ground that we thought was going to resolve the problem. Cabinet was on recession. The principal of the government negotiation team, and we have spoken to our members to understand for cabinet to grant the necessary mandate to the government negotiation team. Came in January, we came in February, the position of government remains the same. Albeit the fact that union have even downscaled where they were before. We deadlocked again, we went and then external. We appeared before conciliation at the Ministry of Labor, and we tried to bring ourselves close to each other, and every time each party is putting convincing factors on the table. One must say, but then you looked at convincing factor and also you put a broader picture. It's unfortunate you find others only seeing the factors that do not appear to include the employees who must understand and who now are understanding for 5 financial years. Yeah. At the conciliation, we still appear not to come together, and we extended the first round of conciliation to go for the first time. We went out region by region, consulting our members, because this time around it became very difficult for us to make a decision without having full consent of everybody affected. Because it becomes now a culture. In the region, the mandate by the workers was loud. We don't want that what is offered. You go, if there is no mobility, deadlock, come back for us to give you the next course of action. And it is now here where we are at the position where we are canvassing the next course of action from the people who should give us the correct mandate. The Labor Act is clear. You deadlock there on your own. You appear before the Office of the Labor Commissioner. In terms of Section 82, you find yourself, if you don't find yourself, a certificate of unresolved dispute is issued. And then when it is issued, you may still find yourself, alternatively from that point on, the next provision made is the right to the employees and the right to the employer. In terms of Section 74, the employees may strike if they so want, or they take industrial action if they so want, because just strike and industrial action mean different things, a little bit. And the employer may lock them out if the employer so choose. Section 676 also have a consideration which is discretionary in our opinion, but of late it became really a preference by employers to act as if it is an unavoidable must-do act to withdraw everything when employees are not at work without looking at facts. And I think we will need to go around that one as we talk.
As we talk, I think,
now we are there.
Yes, I think you've painted a very clear picture now. Herbert, what is your take? I mean, people having gone for that long amid increasing inflation, cost of living, and having understood their employer for that long, your thoughts?
Yes, no, it is a terrible scenario for the workers concerned and their unions, because government has gone back on its own word. I remember the previous finance minister publicly announced some years back that government might in future not be able to give increases, but at the very least they would give inflation adjustments, meaning if inflation is 5%, the wages would go up by 5%. Now, if you do that, you're basically telling your civil servants, look, your income will remain more or less the same in terms of purchasing power, what you can buy with your salary. Now, like my brother has outlined here, 5 years without that means that combined civil servants have lost about 25 to 30% of the purchasing power compared to where they were in 2018. 2017, 2018, in that financial year. Now that's substantial. And of course, right now, with so many costs escalating due to the increase in oil prices and foodstuff, wheat, etc., the pressure is growing immensely. And we must also remember that for many civil servants, they are the main income earners in their particular households, with huge levels of unemployment. That one salary of a civil servant usually stretches to cover a whole lot of people there. And I think this is the background why it is so severe for civil servants now, just in terms of maintaining their payments, maintaining their families, etc. Government, on the other hand, in that very period that we're talking about, has shot up our national debt from about 30% of GDP to 70% in these very 5 years. And one wonders, where did that money go? Where really did that money go? That we've accumulated such massive debt. And when you look at the latest budget of the finance minister, we're now spending about 9 billion on debt servicing and interest. That's a massive amount. That would fund easily the civil service increases plus a basic income grant in the country, for example, what we just pay on debt servicing now. And government has also then last year taken out a special loan with the International Monetary Fund, where in the agreement that was signed, they say that the Namibian government commits itself to containing the wage bill in the civil service. So you borrow money from the IMF, which is known for its conditionalities all over Africa. We don't have to look far. All our neighbors experience that. And cutting the wage bill, or maintaining it at least, not increasing, is one of the conditions that the Namibian government has already agreed to. Now, negotiations like we've seen now require an approach in good faith, which means you try and accommodate the other side. It's a compromise scenario. But you cannot go into negotiations and say, well, we agree to anything as long as it doesn't cost money. That is bad faith negotiation, because you're wasting everyone's time. So unless you are willing to accommodate the other side and listen to reasonable amounts, and like we heard, the unions were also willing to even compromise on their demands, which were not excessive given that for 4 years there were no increases. It's looking at a difficult scenario, and it will be very interesting what the civil servants overall are saying now in the ballot that's taking place, or took place this last few days, and then how it will unfold. Will government, when the civil servants have decided to go on strike, will they then go back to the negotiation table and be more willing to accommodate and look for a kind of compromise that might be acceptable? We don't know. Or will they dig in the heels and say, well, we're not going to pay them. They are going to starve after a few days or a few weeks. So we're going to sit it out. We don't know which way it will go.
Yeah. Just quickly again, Herbert, on that IMF condition of not increasing the wage bill, is it, technically speaking, does it mean that they may not use that specific money, that IMF money, to increase the wage bill? Or is it to say that you may not even use your other revenue streams to do that?
The way it looks from looking at the agreement, the Namibian government basically said, we agree that we will not do it. That means with whatever money there is.
Yeah.
And such agreements are dangerous because you allow third parties to prescribe how you run your country. And that is the classical conditionality of structural adjustment program. Because what the IMF then does is, okay, you go ahead, you spend extra money, you will have to come back to us for more loans. And then, and we had in our region, countries like Mozambique, where 70% of the budget comes from outside sources. The Mozambican cabinet basically just says yes to what the lenders prescribe. And that's a scenario that we've been warning about in Namibia, that we had actually till 6 years ago or so, a scenario where we could have avoided that altogether. And this is the thing where we're waiting for a clear explanation. What happened that you move your debt so rapidly within 6 years, more than double it in proportion to the GDP, and you put the whole future generation now into a financial squeeze. And what we're seeing now here is the first result of that. That as you spend more and more on debt repayment, you have less and less available for social obligations, for salary adjustments, for essential services that government must provide.
And also to add on that, it's really sad that one sees only one window of opportunity when it comes to having access to financial services. We want to believe that Namibia have now grown as a country with the financial sector having the capacity to be able to provide some of these services. And I don't know whether it is going to be convincing to say borrowing such an amount of money outside in hard currency is cheaper than borrowing such an amount of money locally, whether here in Botswana or in South Africa. It is really striking to think that the International Monetary Fund becomes an option when it is well known. And from 2019 already, they have started having this agenda on Africa, promoting only privatization and outsourcing of public sectors, while in their own countries, on the contrary to this, they are popularizing remunicipalization, for instance, where the municipal services were outsourced. They realize service to the citizens becomes expensive, and therefore they all want to bring this back to the municipalities on the public fund and provide affordable services that speak to the welfare of their people. But here is the contrary. Not only that, this is not something that should be surprising to the country. This is supposed to be something that you must have had being debated in Parliament before such loan is taken out. It is a shocking thing to us as the bargaining union recognized by the Republic of Namibian government that while we are talking, we were hearing, we are careful, we don't want to borrow. Poof, suddenly when people are insisting and COVID is here, we are hearing we are indebted to IMF. Namibia, and Brother Herbert will know even more on this. I think at international level is now reported 3 times for non-compliance on standards that are supposed to be met at ILO. If we get out of the situation here, Namibia will appear for the first time in front of the International Committee on Standards. And it's worrisome to have a situation like that. It is just all about salaries of 108,000 civil servants. I'm not good at math, but do it. If each of this one has 11 people to support, do the math and tell me what the population will be that benefits. And this is a working population that is taking on their shoulder between 11 and 20 more family members who are dependent on them. When Comrade Herbert said the cost of living, go to chapter 11 of the Constitution on state policy. Go to Article 95, you talk the welfare of people. The welfare of people is about somebody able to afford the cost of living for him or for herself and for the family. And we are not able to just beat this one for 32 years of being a free country. We are reversing and reversing and reversing. And it forces me back to think about something that late Oliver Tambo said already in '84. Yeah, I can't be specific with the quotation, I have to go to it somewhere. But he was saying, look, we are here fighting for the liberation of our country. We are going to free our people from colonialism. We need to remember, the colonialists are bad, but not everything about them is bad. There are these things that are doing good, and if we cannot stand by the standard, our own people will come back and face us the same way
we are
facing the colonialists today. Is it not happening already?
It's happening now.
Yeah.
We go for a quick break and return for second half.
The Evening Review is a daily interview-based talk show that dissects and expounds on current affairs as they occur in Namibia. The show aims at reaching Namibians of all age groups who seek better understanding of the state of current affairs in the country. This show is broadcasted on NTV, 1up2.com, and cross-shared on the following Facebook platforms: Namibian Sun and Namibia Media Holdings. The Evening Review focuses on interviews, latest news, and up-to-the-minute current events. Contact Evening at synergy.com.na. Evening Review, unpacking today's pertinent issues.
My.NA Property Show provides viewers with the best in-class content, engaging interviews, as well as a showcase of the latest property-related products and services. If you would like to feature your brand or your campaign on this platform, contact My.NA at synergy.com.na. My.NA Properties, more than just a roof over your head.
We continue our conversation with Herbert and Gideon. Again, Dr. Gideon, what are the exact demands that workers are making now towards their employer?
Yes. Thank you very much indeed. As a culture, for somebody to continue to live and meet the standard of living, your remuneration must at least be on par. The remuneration of employees has to be revised from time to time, if not more than what the inflation rate is at the time, at least at the level of inflation. The demands of civil servants are similarly in the same fashion. We started considering the inflation. At the time, we were not even at a level where Comrade Herbert is talking about. We calculated cumulative inflation loss to the salary at about 17%. But then we said, let's put down a 10% salary demand. Subject to engagement, subject to factors that are convincing. And that was then that we saw submitted. As this thing came to be engaged on late, we even delegated to 9%. We came to deadlock at 5% on the salary. Of course, we are very, very specific about improvement of condition of services, because you need to recall why you have all those mass houses that are unoccupied. The public was not even given a correct background how mass housing came about. It's the research that trade unions conducted, and they wanted to answer the need of the employees that are unable to get loans from financial institutions, because then your income is calculated at your basic ×5 to find your affordability level. So we had to work on a scheme that could accommodate to the lowest earning person. That's why the subsidy system of government has clustered job categories earning put together. People earning between 0 and 60,000 is first category that should be able to buy houses which are subsidized at 70% to the employer, 30% to themselves. And the next category is 65 to something, and so on. And the management are given an allowance. They don't buy by subsidy. They have a housing allowance because their salaries are already able to convince anybody, and their transport allowance, all these things combined balloon their salaries for consideration of affordability. It did not work because that's not how it was implemented. And you can see First Capital there, which was created to be an in-between institution, was not given that opportunity. I'm very sure if you go there, for it to survive, it must have gone back to the way other financial institutions are. So we wanted the subsidy of the civil servants to be increased from where it is per job category qualification amount by 25%. And we wanted those that are getting this rental allowance and so on to have an increasement of 10%, and the transport that they are given to come with public transport by 10%. And we were also saying our members in the bargaining unit who are managers, they are getting kilometer tariff at $5. We're saying let it also go to $7 per kilometer, because if you use MVA rates, they are very high depending on the car you drive. But government did not want any of that, and they deliberately have overplayed the financial year 2021-2022. We were now saying for the financial year 2021-2022, where we came to start late, let us leave the part of the salary aside. We can convince our members, give us all the benefits, the cost of which was just 225 million then, everybody included. They said, no, look convincing, but then budget for the financial year 2022-2023, a 5-year percent on the basic. It also looked convincing because it was less than 1.5 billion for the entire public service. Went to cabinet is adamant. What we see is rather people preserving whatever is there to buy the last fleet of vehicles before the term of this government expires. Yeah? They are very clever. The last cycle, the politicians were with civil servants, the judges were later. So they can play their game as they wish and so on. So the demands are simple, and we have the figures. We see how the government is still emphasizing 3 billion. It's not on the table. It doesn't make sense to sensitize public about it. You should go to what is on the table. And what is on the table is 5%. That is not more than 1.5 billion. And we were not locking our minds.
You were open
until the members angrily say, we don't want you even to consider that one. Get us inflation, and you know what inflation is now if we are to revert to the table. Or let us take the next course of action. So the demands are really, really, to us, affordable. And for me, if we are to say where the money will come from, I think this country have a lot of avenues. But these avenues also, we appear to have gone beyond the tenets of Article 100, because we are otherwise owning now natural resources that should otherwise belong to the government.
Yeah.
And because we otherwise own it,
yeah,
the government cannot come and tax us properly. We are protecting ourselves.
Yeah.
And we are saying that avenue is closed.
Yeah, hold that thought for me, Gideon, because I wanted exactly to ask Herbert this question. So, government doesn't have money. That's what they are saying, but it's also what we are seeing, that there's no money here. What options do they have to address this situation?
Yes, and this is something that needed to have happened actually years ago, but it's not too late. It needs to happen. We have some of these car schemes are plainly outrageous. It's absolutely mind-blowing. Why people that got through the public funding a private car, and then just because the scheme runs out and they're now entitled to buy a new one, they do that. This is plainly ridiculous if you want to prioritize spending. So you change those things straight away. I remember this issue of lavish benefits for the management cadre. It came up. I was in the Napwu negotiation then in the early days when we signed the recognition agreement. I think it was 95. Napwu and Napwu for the civil servants. So this was one of the first issues when our now president was prime minister that we tabled, that there is a complete disproportionate allocation of benefits to the management cadre. Yeah. So in other words, those people who earn so much that they could buy their own cars from their income, they get it heavily subsidized, while those who earn little get nothing of that, with the housing similar. So one sees then quickly it's geared towards the better off. It's a kind of elite-driven policy. When you go throughout even the state-owned enterprises, although they are now not covered by this agreement, it's the public sector proper, so to say. There are many ways of cutting wasteful expenditure, even by government's own admission. What we've not seen is deliberate action to do that. And you remember a few years ago, the parliamentarians even wanted to build themselves a new parliamentary building for 2 billion. And it was the protest by the youth in the streets that basically put an end to that idea. But what these things show us is that those in privileged positions see nothing wrong in continuing this privilege-related expenditure. And then you have and we are also not utilizing our national resources to the benefit of the country as a whole. The fish rot scandal highlighted that aspect. That the whole fishing industry is then basically geared towards a few individual pockets, a few people that become super rich very quickly. Now, why can that system not be changed to say these resources go to the benefit of public funds, public services, including adjustments of salaries in line with the inflation? And what we heard now about the workers' demand in the public sector is basically just asking, look, with this inflation that has eaten away, give us something, not even everything to cover what we've lost, but something towards catching that cost. Now, that's not a radical or outrageous demand. That is something very reasonable. And we've seen, for example, our political office bearers, including the parliamentarians, they are not shy to adjust their allowances and packages all the time, but not taking cognizance of what other peoples go through. So there is a bit of a hypocrisy in this argument to saying there is no money. There is money for some things. And we can, even the creation of so many ministries, even the creation of so many deputy minister positions, where some have publicly said, this is actually only a ceremonial position because you neither decide on policy, that's cabinet, the minister proper, nor are you implementing because that's the director general and the staff at the ministry. So we could have, for example, taken that and made structural changes, fewer ministries, instead of creating ministries and then abolishing them again. There you're wasting millions of dollars monthly on such exercises. So the argument of there is no money needs to be interrogated, and we've not streamlined to say there is unnecessary expenditure. There is expenditure that benefits only certain individuals, but not the general public. And if we do that exercise consistently, there will be some financial scope without running to the IMF to make some adjustments.
It's please.
When he said there's functions of duplicate of positions, you find them 2 or 3 in some instances. Not only are they unable to make policy decisions, they don't even have the right to stand in when their substantive is not there. You have a deputy minister who cannot act minister. Another substantive minister from another ministry will act substantive in the absence of this minister, while the deputy or 2 are there idle. And you will recall when one of them went to the head of state saying, we are underutilized. Said, if you don't have work, go home. Go home, otherwise keep quiet and get your salary free of charge. I'm giving you a generous offer here. I'm paying you for nothing, and you are coming here to complain. And they are frustrated. There is nothing like being a person of integrity, sitting there knowing you are of no value and you are paid as if you are a person of value. They don't support it, most of them.
And speaking of duplication, on social media this week I was saying that I can't remember any country, except maybe the most corrupt ones in the world, that has a president, vice president, prime minister, deputy prime minister, before you then go to the bloated cabinet that we have. I mean, how do we have these top 4, all of them?
Now we even have ministers over ministers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. In South Africa, you have president, deputy president, and then you have your ministers. Again, so it's difficult then to come up with, I mean, we even bloated parliament not too long ago. So in 2014, the current president, of course, with the chairperson of the law reform at the time, collaborated for parliament to be increased, I think, from 74 seats to 102 and 4 now. All these things. And so when you turn around later and tell these people that, look, you haven't gotten anything for 5 years because I don't have money, and I'm not prepared to give you that even now, so basically just leave me alone. How do you convince someone to accept that when they know all these facts, these wasteful government decisions to sort of accommodate friends and comrades? It's difficult. But please.
Now consider even this other element. We now have these people. They are told to tighten the belt. And I like it when you said it can't anymore on the radio. I remember very well. Do they have belts anymore? The workers don't have those belts anymore. And they are told to tighten it. But then it's like government is dragging towards the implementation of FEMA in October. Because come the implementation of FEMA, the subjecting of all pension funds to a what do you call it?
Provident.
Not this. This
pension fund.
No, it's this law that they are creating now to the preservation fund. Is simply in a layman's language to say is an open window to retrenchment at no cost. Is that one? Now you have IMF condition that says reduce public service, reduce the wage bill. And here's the opportunity. Under preservation fund, if I retrench you as government, I'm not obliged to pay you out. I'm only giving you 25% of your 1/3 and say, hi, you are not old yet. Wait until you turn 60. Maybe we can talk me paying your pension.
Yeah.
And right now, pension payout is the critical aspect that you don't just want to go into.
Exactly.
Government did not keep people just because it wanted, it's because it's expensive to pay them out.
Yeah.
Even this outrageous idea that was out there to encourage people from 50 to retire was unaffordable already. It was just another scheme of other people. But then you have this FEMA coming, all the funds of all pension funds or all annuity funds are going to be subjected to preservation until you are above 55.
Yeah.
But you have somebody that looks so good when you see them there, but the kidney fails, the heart fails, the medical aid is not able to pay for that. Yeah. There is nobody in the family who can do that. Many people have opted to resign to access this amount and pay for their lives. It's going to be closed.
Yeah.
Yeah? But the window of retrenchment is going to be so open.
Yeah.
It will actually be no more window. And it's worrisome to us representing workers, knowing. And that's why we went out there loudly saying, stop this thing. Let us look at the regulations, because the act is a problem. It simply has given the minister outrageous power. Now he stops provision for incrementing the budget. He will also stop what you get when you lose your job. It's just not acceptable, to allow somebody to sing until that stage. And you say a person must be patient.
I hear you. We go for the final break and return.
Africa Good Morning is a current affairs program that brings you the latest from Southern Africa and beyond. News, economics, sport, weather, interviews, and so much more. For any advertising or news-related queries, contact AGM at synergy.com.na. Africa Good Morning, bringing Africa to you.
NMH Ad Spotter spots the daily NMH printed editions for the daily newspapers to the retail specials, as well as weekly, monthly, and yearly focus editions. If you would like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, please contact adspotter@synergy.com.na. NMH Ad Spotter. Spot it, like it, buy it.
The conversation continues here on the agenda. I have now a question for Herbert, but I want Gideon's view also on it, and that is this long-standing debate around the issue of affiliation. To say that the NUNW family of unions being affiliated to the ruling party, I've always seen it in two different ways. The positive one, obviously, is to say that it gives you a bit of proximity to those that are leading the country and the ruling party, and therefore you have that easy access to have things done. But the opposite is also true, that because we know the history of the unions and how they have always positioned themselves, especially the leaders of the unions, to position themselves for parliamentary and cabinet positions, and that sometimes they may not want to step on toes of those that are in the leadership, and they may therefore compromise on certain things. In what is playing out at the moment, how do you sketch this relationship in relation to that?
Yes, it's a very relevant aspect, because this debate comes, of course, a long time in the union. We debated it since the 90s in our Congress. What's the best relationship between unions and the ruling party? Now, in this particular case, government's chosen role in labor relations is actually to be kind of a neutral referee. That's what they said. Even when the Labor Act, the first one, was introduced in '92, the then Labor Minister, the late Witbooi, said, our role will be to be kind of the neutral referee, and we let employers and unions kind of through collective bargaining deal with their issues. Now in this case now, we have government being two at one, the employer and the referee. And it was quite telling this week when in a press conference, the Labor Minister, who is supposed to be the referee per se, that ministry through the office of the Labor Commissioner, to then deal with unresolved disputes. Now the referee says up front, there is no money for increases. Now, how do you expect the unions then to go to that ministry, which happens of course also to be a ruling party member and leading figure, to be in any way accommodating of the two sides when the Labor Minister has already expressed himself clearly as an employer. And for the unions, it's now a difficult scenario. The hope was always the proximity might help unions to influence policies and decisions in favor of their members. But now, when government comes and says, well, there is no money, go to your members and convince them. That's an attempt to turn the tables and to say, look, comrades, we are in the same boat here, times are tough, convince your member. Then it's an attempt by government to instrumentalize the unions for their own ends.
Absolutely.
Now, the point is for a union, the principle is workers' control, must be, so that the union's mandate comes from members. You listen to government, yes, you take their arguments, you debate it in your structures, then the workers give a mandate to the union negotiators and of course delegate themselves also onto that task, and that's how negotiations go. So for unions in this scenario, Nampu and Napwu particularly as affiliates and recognized unions and affiliates of NUNW, it's now a scenario where the proximity to the ruling party through the federation is not helping to solve the deadlock. And that's why basically going to the members with a vote on a strike is the only option left. What can you do when you've negotiated so many years, you can't reach agreement? What else? And I think this is where in the public there's sometimes this notion of, yeah, the unions want us all to suffer, they're causing chaos now. One must look at it holistically, at this picture. And I think the presentation we got this evening clearly shows that the unions have tried to accommodate government's constraints. And in fact, some might say they bent almost backward to accommodate government. 4 years without even an inflation adjustment. So I think the public needs to understand this is now not a union going wild and saying we want for ourselves despite the suffering of others. There is really a history to it, and it's now also on the part of government to move a bit and accommodate the unions. Otherwise, of course, the question will come, what is this political linkage and affiliation for if workers are treated like that by the ruling party?
Absolutely. Gideon?
Yes, first, I like the debate.
Yeah.
I just like things given the correct
context.
context.
Make sure that my viewers can
The correct context.
Yeah.
And the correct context is what is it that is in this relationship?
Yeah.
The relationship between the Federation, NUNW, and Swabo Party is not one of a subordinate and the boss.
Yeah.
It's of mutual understanding and equally each one maintaining their independence proper. And it must be remembered, the union is not the one that was founded by the party. The party is the one that was founded by the workers. And you will have to go and look in your record. The last you would have seen the union sponsoring members to parliament was before 2014.
Yeah.
We don't see that need because it did not work out when our people were going there with the hope to go and impact policy in favor of the workers. The oath of allegiance in parliament does not give them that scope. Yeah, it does not. You can't go be there and represent the workers. Hey, come on, you take an oath of allegiance and say, I will keep all the secrets of parliament. Yeah. If we have to go kill Toivo, who's the worker today, I will not talk about it.
Yeah, collective.
No.
They say collective.
That's why those titles, I'm just happy you picked it up because we have told the Honorable Minister already somewhere in March that we don't understand these people. We said you even have a Secretary of Labor at the party. We don't see them with the workers.
Yeah.
Which workers are the secretary for? People must not misinterpret this because that's why they want to flag this thing of unions are divided. And we also became smart about this. We're not going to be crushed against each other because we know the best way of silencing workers is to segment them. Yeah, we're getting smart about that. So the focus remains that in each country, the government is about the people, the civilians. And the majority of these people are working people. They are not only important because they are citizens, they are important because they help the very government of their own to raise sufficient income to manage the country. So here is a mutual relationship between the government and the workers.
Yeah.
And we talk workers of Namibia when it comes to NW. That's why you saw when I was there on the Minimum Wage Commission, you could not have heard me talking about any of this one union only. I was looking out for workers of Namibia. Yeah, people have to understand that part. But here is a situation where we are supposed to be in terms of international labor standard. If there is something coming up, we all are consulted. We all make input. We all agree that it works. But here you have a system that feels big. Exactly what we did not want when we went to war is what we are bringing back. The colonizer didn't want to be told. Colonizer was making decisions. So if you don't implement it, you are a terrorist. You are somebody problematic. You are subject to this law. Now we are copying back these things. Yeah. We even have a situation where even the people who we accept to be representative of peace, of stability, we have a pouring of employees trying to make a decision. They don't, some of them are refusing to take responsibility to protect the balloting boxes. Yeah? That's an instruction from somewhere. And this is not explained. The supervisor of this process put it on Facebook. I'm going to tell everybody. We're getting from regions where junior police at level of chief inspector saying you cannot store material here. As if there is a motive around that. Yeah. And we find the Minister of Labor here. He is the government. The Minister of Information Technology is now the Minister of Labor talking. The Minister of Finance is now the judge and the jury. It's just not on. Yeah. It's just not on. Now, do we want our people that were so cooperative, that were so understanding, that were so humble for 32 years to start using their civic rights to make decisions that can then speak louder than themselves? That's what we do not want to see.
You've made a good point.
Yeah.
Herbert, we do not know what will be the outcome of the balloting process that is going on. I suppose Gideon would let us know as soon as that is on the table. But my fear is that if they vote in favor of the strike, which is the likely scenario, that will then face a situation of of a shutdown of government. I have argued in my editorial on Friday in Namibian Sun that if I were government and the outcome comes out in favor of a strike, the immediate thing I must do is to simply succumb to the demands. Instead of wasting time, get into a shutdown that will damage the economy further, and you would now have to find both money to pay the workers and money to repair the damage of that action. If you can engage me on that. Please.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And it's likely after 4 years of non-adjustments that the civil servants are, because they know if they don't take action now, it means a 5th year and possibly a 6th and 7th year without adjustment. How long can it go on? So quite rightly, I would also expect a substantial majority to vote in favor of a strike. For government, exactly, they must now weigh up. Do we dig in our heels? Do we play power games? And at what cost to the country, to the economy, but also to the functioning of the civil service going further? Because a strike, a controversial action, then maybe an end to it that doesn't please anybody substantially, is the worst possible outcome. And we've seen recent strikes in state-owned enterprises, how bad that can go. So for government, it would be after the 48 hours notice given by the unions of a strike, I would expect those 48 hours, they must go back to the negotiation table, review their hardline stance, and reach an agreement with the union. Because you're quite right, the damage to the economy, the damage to the relationship in the civil servant, and possibly even kind of the quality of service delivery afterwards might be so negatively affected that you say, well, now we've saved a few dollars, but at what cost to the country, to the people, to the economy, to labor relations in the public sector? And generally, it would send a very bad signal. And I think this is what government needs to wear. And that's where leadership comes in, that you now are bold enough to say, given this scenario, this is what we need to do to solve that. And I would hope before the strike actually commences, that an agreement could be reached within those 48 hours. Government knows what's been demanded. Government knows its financial position. And government should also be able to look at ways of cutting unnecessary expenditure elsewhere to accommodate that. And I think that's what a responsible government needs to do in a scenario like this.
Yeah. Jerome, my producer is telling me that our time is up, but it was an absolute pleasure having both of you. I think it was a massive, massive enlightening session tonight. So thank you to both of you for coming.
Yes, thank you very much. We're also happy to have been here.
Yeah.
We can only say that we hope for the best.
Yes.
As workers, ours is a recognition that we are citizens of the same country. There is no other island where we could migrate to.
Yeah.
But we're also conscious of the way of living that people need to live, and to live they need income.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was tonight on the agenda. Thank you for watching and have a blessed week ahead.